And we are joined now by NewsNation political contributor and political scientist at Princeton University, Dr. Lauren Wright. Doctor, it's always great to see you. So I do want to get right to the update that we've received into the newsroom. The Hill reporting that Senate Majority Leader John Thune is ready to proceed with the vote. To find out for sure, though, where Senator Lisa Murkowski stands on this bill. Do you believe, I know you mentioned yesterday to Marnie, that this will eventually pass the finish line. Do you believe Republicans, though, at this hour have the votes?
I think they wouldn't be moving ahead if they didn't. However, I don't know whether it's Murkowski or Collins that'll defect. But I think if I had to guess, Kelly, it would be the maximum number and a tie-breaking vote because, you know, those two moderates are always the question mark. And I don't know the conversations happening behind the scenes, but, you know, they can afford to lose one more senator besides the two that we know, Paul and Tillis, and they probably will.
Yeah. We know there's less wiggle room in the House than there is in the Senate.
Much less.
Right, right. And, you know, as all of this is playing out, you imagine, well, we know that Republicans in the House are watching this closely. What do you believe may be the biggest sticking points as we've watched these votes on amendments up to this point, nearly 24 hours now? What do you think will be the biggest things they'll be taking issue with on the other side?
I do believe it's the Medicaid cuts because, look, even though I've talked at length about how some of these cuts are things Obama introduced in his own budget, a lot of them are cutting waste and doing basic common sense reforms like work requirements that Republicans have supported for many years. The fact that the Senate cuts are deeper in effect than the House cuts is going to be a question mark for moderates in the House. And then the hardline budget Republicans in the House might revolt at the very end. But hopefully Johnson, and I'm sure he is having those conversations ahead of time and planning for a very, very thin margin in his own chamber.
Yeah. You know, the tax cuts are the plus for Republicans, or at least what they're billing as the plus. The biggest problems, fiscal responsibility. Many are at odds with the proposed changes to Medicaid as well. The projections, this is going to be adding trillions to our national debt. But the Republican counter up to this point has been essentially, we're eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse within Medicaid, and the CBO scoring's off. This is part of a bigger financial picture that will reconcile the debt. For lawmakers voting yes, how strong of a political message is that to turn back around and make to their constituents?
Look, a lot of this is a very tough message to sell. And even though Republicans are doing some popular things, tax cuts, which will benefit 80% of Americans if they're continued, even in the lowest income quintile, when it's a few $100s a year, that still makes a big difference to families approaching the poverty line. That's a huge deal. So they should stick to that message. But of course, you can't say that you're a hardliner fiscal responsibility person if you're adding these trillions. So the tough case they need to make is tell the American public how this will grow the economy. Make the case, make the Reaganomics case that tax cuts grow the economy and demonstrate that. And demonstrate that Democrats don't have any of their own ideas to cut spending. They just want to raise taxes. And tax cuts are normally what Americans vote for, not tax increases.
We have 30 seconds left, but I do want to ask you this, because the polls show this is not popular. People aren't on board across the board. How much time will be given to grade the success or failure of this bill if it is, in fact, passed? If the economy takes off, booms. We are seeing inroads with our national debt, offset by potentially tariffs or other strategies. Will all of this be a distant memory come the midterms? Because that's really the focus here.
I don't know, because frankly, a lot of policies, including economic policies, take a long time to flesh out. But Americans will be judging the success of this by the economy right now, by their own lives right now. And that might not be fair, but it's a test Americans set on Republicans and Democrats alike. So no matter who's in the White House, they own the current conditions. And that applies to Trump, too.
Yeah, well, always great to get your insights. Dr. Lauren Wright, thank you so much for rejoining the program.